Hey, it's the first Friday of the month, so it's book review time. Today, we're looking at Faithful Futures by Josh Packard. So you might have seen a month or so ago, Rod Paddington posted this book on the Hunter Presbytery Facebook group. I mentioned it in the training I did about listening that I'd heard Josh Packard speak at Intergenerate, our online conference, a couple of months ago. So I got the book. I've read it. Don't take where the bookmark is. I have read the whole thing. And what a book. Josh wants us to think about how we connect with young people. And he recognises that the world has changed. And he starts by recognising this change and what it means for us. He says, "We've been making this same kind of mistake when we think about Gen Z and Gen Alpha. We keep trying to understand them by relying on what is available and certain. Most of us go back to our own teenage years to try and understand today's teenagers. This is what people in ministry positions have done for years, and for a very long time, it worked pretty well. We were essentially translating from driving around Dallas to driving around Kansas City. Not so different. But now we find ourselves in Calcutta. The experiences of Gen Z and Alpha are so different from our own that our mental models and maps are essentially useless. The more we try to rely on what life was like for us as teenagers, the more we find ourselves helpless, out of touch, and the more we try to use the tools that adults use to reach us as teens, the more we struggle to make any kind of connection." So that recognition that the world has radically changed and the young people have radically changed. They're not, yes, they go through similar things to us as when we were teenagers, but the world around them and the way they interact has radically changed. And so we need to change what we're doing. In particular, he recognises that one of the key changes has been a loss of trust, not just in the church, but in all institutions. He has statistics in there that I'm not going to bore you with. But he says this: "Programs, curricula, and time in the building are all effective tools to nurture faith and spiritual development in a high-trust world. But we don't live in that world anymore. Study after study has shown that we are living in a time of eroding institutional trust. Levels of trust in organisations, leaders, and one another are at or near all-time lows. The same tools that worked in a high-trust world are not likely to be very effective now. This chapter will show why relational authority is the low-trust tool we need to have a real impact and influence in the life of a young person today." So recognising that building relationships and listening is the key. That how we're helping to listen. And key to this, he introduces the idea of sacred listening, which you can find in the book. You can also find on their website, Future Faith. And so he explores it. And sacred listening, he says, is about understanding that the other person is in the image of God. And so how do we value that and value that person? That we try and communicate with them in a way that is comfortable for them, that makes sense for them and helps them to feel heard. Not just our way of communicating, but what works for them. It also then looks at how do we pick up patterns in what we're hearing? And how do we record them so we can study them, look at them, and then how do we act on those? So we listen and then we act. And we make changes based on what the young people have been saying. That's so important. We want to learn how do we listen well so that our young people can feel heard. And as they feel heard, then of course they're going to connect in more and more. Listening is so important. He talks about the dangers of loneliness. That it's actually, some researchers said, profound loneliness is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. You know, it affects our health. How are we helping our young people who are, there's a number of places I've seen, and this book says, the loneliest generation ever. So how do we help them? They're connecting, but they're not connected. So he explores what has affected young people. He explores some of the generational characteristics, or he says perhaps we've gone beyond nice little generations that we can talk about. Maybe we've moved on. You can discuss that with him, work out whether you agree with that or not. He looks at the impacts that have come on young people, particularly things like social media and COVID. And so this comes post-COVID, and so he explores the impact that COVID has had, particularly that impact that through formational times, young people were not connecting in the same ways that we connected. And so we're not learning the skills that we learned in how do you connect with people in public places and face-to-face. And so sometimes they struggle with some of that. How can we help them with that struggle? How can we help them to learn to communicate better? He explores this. And each chapter explores some ideas and then has a sacred listening idea. Now, why don't you try this with your group of young people? How to listen to them. He also explores the metrics that we use. How do we say if we're doing well? In the past, it was how many people we've got, what sort of budget we've got, what sort of resources we have, which are all great if we want to keep the institution going, because they're all focused on institution. But because our world has changed, are they really the metrics about faith? Yes, they might not be in the room on Sunday, but they might be exploring faith. They might be in the room on Sunday not exploring faith. What are the metrics we need? He explores some of that. I'll let you explore that yourself. Grab the book, borrow it from me. But I want to finish with a couple of quotes from the end of his book that I think are important. The first one says this: if we can employ one or more of the sacred listening tools described here or on our website, www.futureoffaith.org, you'll find that you're systematically undoing the preconceived ideas that young people have about adults. The more you listen in structured ways, convey that listening, and take action based on what you've learned from young people, the harder it will be for them to maintain the narrative that adults don't care about them. It'll be harder for them to feel alone. It will be more difficult for them to see you and other adults as untrustworthy. They will slowly come to see you as a safe person with whom they can try things out and make mistakes. If you can treat listening as a sacred exercise, and it will make it significantly harder and less desirable for young people to retreat into their personal bubbles. So, if we're doing this well, if we're connecting with young people well, listening to them, it changes how they see us, it changes how they see all adults, and we build that ability to have faith conversations with them. And of course, we go, I want to read this book and I want to learn all the facts about young people that I need to know. And he has these wide words in his conclusion. Some of the ideas in the chapters above will help you understand more about what emerging generations are facing, but ultimately, the sacred work of listening, writing things down and following up in structured ways is up to you. The information and insights you most need can be provided only by you and your community. Gathering that information and acting in ways that support young people directly is ministry in the 21st century. So how do we listen well? How do we do these things so our young people are growing? Grab the book, borrow it from me, order it, and check it out. A great book helping us to think and learn how do we listen well to our young people who we recognise are quite different to us, and how are we helping them to grow in their faith. Catch you next month.